very impressed with the work that you ladies are doing. I very much appreciate it, and I wish you well. Well, now that time is catching up with us survivors, even the child survivors, one of whom I am, I feel more than ever the need to, the responsibility to remind people about the German genocide against the Jews. Most people, when they think of the Holocaust, they think of concentration camps. I've never been in a concentration camp. I've never been deported. Few people know that we, Jews from Eastern Poland, have never been taken out of our milieu. We were not deported. Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing squads, came to us. They rounded up and shot the Jewish population in shtetl after shtetl. More than 1.5 million Jews were murdered this way. Recently, this has come to be known as the Holocaust by bullets. Every victim faced his murderer. So you see, each survivor has a unique story to tell. But they've been unable to talk about it for many a decade, and that does not exclude me. Finally, I became obsessive about having a personal record for my children and grandchildren, which evolved into my published memoir. It is a collage of prose, narrative poems, and photographs. For today, I selected a series of poems and arranged them chronologically to try to give you, as best as words can say, some insight into that overwhelming event. I'd like to begin with my poem, Why I Write. I've been silent so long, now I'm obsessed. Language is wanting, but I must struggle to put it in words. I write to justify my survival. Summoned by the millions who died, I write to testify, to take the world and God to task for their silence. I write to search for answers, for release and for repair, lest my grief spill over. I was born in a small shtetl in Lachva, called Lachva, in eastern Poland. When the Germans invaded in July of 1941, Lachva had a population of 6,000 people, including 2,000 Jews. The following poem recalls the German invasion. Suddenly there was the German invasion, primitive fear mixed with rational thought. They're civilized people, our parents said, and though they tried to keep a calm exterior and even speak to us kids of cheerful things, we sensed that they were worried, and that made us afraid and filled our minds with dark imaginings. We gauged our circumstance by their expression. When they smiled a little, for that moment we were not afraid. I felt secretly reassured when, level with my child's eyes, I saw the inscription on the soldiers' belt buckles, Gott mit uns, God's with us. But why the swastika, the Hakenkreuz, the swastika? In place of God, they worshipped murder, obsessed with genocide, devouring in cold blood as many defenseless innocents as they could, calling themselves honorable German soldiers. Dear God, I expected better from you. Immediately, the Germans imposed a curfew and set up a Judenrat, a Jewish council through whom they proceeded to transmit their orders. On August 1941, their order called for all men, 14 and over, to report, to be processed, and sent away to work. They intended to kill them all and bury them in prepared ditches, just as they did in all the neighboring towns. The head of our Judenrat, Lachva, I feel I must hear the name, convinced the SS that it would be to their advantage to let the men live and use them as slave labor. And they saw merit in it. It fell to me, my father said, to shine horses' hides, when a good German whispered cautiously, wenn ich ein Jude wär, würde ich Selbstmord begehen. If I were a Jew, I'd kill myself. My father spoke of him as a good German. Grandfather came to comfort us. I had 2 little sisters. Keep your faith and trust in God, he said. And he intoned with us a prayer of pleading for our parents to come back. Then Grandpa raised his fragile hands as if to place on us a blessing, to bid us life itself, perhaps. And we saw tears in Grandpa's eyes. We took the few possessions allowed, and I carried my favorite coat. After a final look around the house they had built, my parents carefully closed the door behind them, and we went. From the first day in the ghetto, our boys secretly began to prepare for an uprising, should the end come. Unable to procure weapons, they accumulated axes, iron bars, and some naphtha, a kind of gasoline, to torch the ghetto houses. When on September 3rd, 1942 still, the Einsatzgruppen, the mobile killing squads, arrived in Lachva, in my town, we knew that our time was up. The house where the Judenrat functioned burst into flames, a signal from the head of the Judenrat to begin the uprising. Immediately there were houses on fire all around the ghetto. Flames and smoke filled that narrow ghetto street. The Germans panicked, began to shoot at random into the hysterical mob as families, calling out aloud in prayer, struggled to hold on to one another to say goodbye. In our family, 28 people were lost that morning, including my mother, age 36, and my sister, age 16. Both sets of grandparents, all my aunts and uncles and cousins. All visions were ending. Gone was all hope. Cruelty was raging in unimaginable scope. Goodbye, childhood dreams and times yet to be. The chaos that morning, the murder of my kin, their piercing screams recurring in my brain. Time is powerless to heal my gnawing pain. About 600 people died on the streets of Lachva while running from the ghetto. Many reached the marshes, as we did, but when it was all over, 83 people remained alive out of the 2,000. We could have died of terror, of grief, of hunger, of typhus fever from lice and filth. We could have been poisoned by the stagnant water we scooped up and drank from Father's shoes, or mushrooms resembling the edible variety. We could have died from exposure to the full force of the long, brutal Russian winter, or wolves eager for prey. We could have been betrayed to the Germans by some trusted local informer for a kilo of salt as a reward. We didn't die. We endured, drank water from a hole in the ground, ate saltless stolen potatoes while concocting fantasies about recipes from home. We dreamed of sitting down to a meal, of taking off our clothes, of warm water and cleanliness. At night, under cover of darkness, behind walls of green and towering canopies of trees, we often chanted prayers and sang songs. And subsequently, we ended up in a displaced persons camp in Germany. Daddy wanted to take his two little girls out of Poland or the bloody Europe altogether. The Polish landscape with its villages vanishes into the past, even as we look. We hoist our bundles onto the deck of a flat car of an endless moving freight, hurl ourselves onto the platform, hanging on for dear life as the train gains speed. Houses drifted by with lighted windows. Smoke rises from chimneys. We can't imagine the lives of the people inside. Only our existence seems real. From the camp, we came to the United States in 1946. My father, an aunt of his, lived in the Bronx. My father, before the war, addressed letters to her from her parents, from my great-grandparents. He just dropped a note remembering the address, and then the note was just a piece of paper folded in a triangle. Nobody had paper or envelopes. And he sent it off, and sure enough, they got it. He told them that out of the whole family, I have that letter, they gave it to me. He and his two little girls survived. And my final poem, I tried to find one as cheerful as I possibly could, is called My Red Dress. I always wanted to don shocking red, but ended up wearing black and gray instead. I wanted to have a sense of belonging, but felt disconnected at every crossing. I never have heard the music of life without remembering its darkest side. But very recently, I have realized my quest. Though I haven't yet worn it, I bought a red dress.
I want to thank our representatives from the Township Committee for attending this function with us and staying for the whole thing. I think each of us were touched really with the way she presented the story, and I would like to present to Evelyn, in honor of Evelyn Ripp for sharing her life story with the Springfield chapter of Hadassah and her dedication in keeping the history of the Shoah alive, March 25th, 2010. And if it's for the pictures, can we put it this way?